Utilities. Good morning, Cara. How are you?
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. How is the new position going for you?
It's going well so far. I like it.
It's kind of nice to come in already with a controversy, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Hit the ground running.
Yeah, it fell in our lap that next week. So
It's Jefferson County. There's always going to be a controversy.
it's better now, though, I would argue.
Yeah, we had Pasha Majdi on yesterday, and at that point he said he wasn't free to discuss the situation with Sidewinder and a suit from a Mr. Hewitt, who's a resident nearby, who I suppose has some concerns about the water being taken from Lake Louisa and the groundwater effects that's going to have on his wells. Has there been a change in status since yesterday, Cara, regarding the ability of the Commission to talk on this?
I think the way I'm viewing it is I think it's the timing that I can't talk about, but I think other aspects, the concept plan, what's been discussed so far by Sidewinder and everything else, I think is fair. I have obviously received an outpouring of very legitimate concerns around the project, and even a hydrologist. So they aren't coming from a place of anti-growth. They're coming from a non-political realm concerned about water and many other things.
Are you concerned as a county commissioner or a resident of Jefferson County that because of situations in the past, these concerns may be interpreted by the business community as there goes Jefferson County being anti-growth again?
I am pro-business, but I do think that as a politician, I ran on the principle of sustainable development. And you need to look at, for this particular topic, Bill Stubblefield brought up a really good point about the recharge rate and the possible cone of depression, which a hydrologist has brought up too. So the property, and there's a lot of layers to this. You have the property that's zoned industrial commercial, where the former 3M plant was located on. They have a right to use that 3M plant, that parcel, for industrial commercial use. And as a Republican, I do want to support a commercial tax base. We need a myriad of commercial tax uses in our county. We have, we're residential heavy. We need medical. We need a mix of retail, commercial, office, light industrial, commercial uses in our county. But with this particular parcel, and the reason why it was rejected, I was on the Planning Commission when it was rejected, and I actually made the motion.
But you are no longer on the Planning Commission, correct?
Correct, yeah. But I did make the motion, and the reason why is because part of their concept was missing the parcels where the wells were, and in my view, that's part of the concept plan. And those parcels are zoned rural. So there's a lot of layered issues with this project, which I think is why it's become a very non-political concern. So with the extraction rate, if there's a lot of things that we need to know as concerned citizens. I'm coming into this wanting to have more transparency and more answers from a technical side, so I feel better about the project, and I want to keep an open mind about it. But at the concept plan, what was missing was information on those parcels. It wasn't included, and then since then, I think Mr. Hewitt, he's an adjoining landowner to the well area where Lake Louise is. And he owns a parcel that is in farmland protection, and so there's a lot of things with that as well. So back to the possible cone of depression. If extraction rate exceeds a recharge rate, what I'm concerned about is a cone of depression and taking resources from neighboring properties. So it's a very legitimate question that Mr. Stubblefield has brought up, and I would encourage Sidewinder to look into that and to do additional testing both in drought and non-drought arenas. So if it's if they have done a test, but it was not at the past 2 years we've had really bad droughts. So farmers are already struggling with water. So I would encourage them to do additional testing and work with the citizens so that they're more comfortable and have some of these questions answered.
I understand you heard the Sean Masterson interview from Sidewinder earlier this week.
I did.
Your thoughts on what his information was, and if any of it helped to clarify or just further muddied your concerns?
I did not have any of my questions answered.
Such as
The technical answers about the extraction exceeding. Part of the problem is Sidewinder is, from what I'm understanding, and I could be wrong, but from what I'm understanding, they're not the end user. So I think part of their problem is they don't want to promise anything because they're not going to be the ultimate company that comes in and bottles water. So I think they're trying to be careful with that, which I understand. But I think from a citizen standpoint, I think we do deserve to know those answers, especially if it impacts neighboring parcels. So I'm all for property rights, but there's also other property rights we have to take into consideration too.
Was there anything else in his interview where you thought he was not answering a question directly, ducking it, or just didn't provide information you felt was correct?
I think, to be fair, we're going to have another concept plan, and I encourage him and his team to just bring forth more answers for that concept plan. So I want to keep an open mind. I want to work with businesses that come here, but I want to make sure they're good businesses and that they're not going to hurt neighboring parcels.
John?
Yeah, I think you summed up my concerns with this when you said, I believe they're not the end user, but I could be wrong. There's so much unknown,
right,
and it seems to me intentional veiled details to this that I find that really concerning. And given that the end product is water, it's one thing to use production water so that you know that you can pull this much out if you want, but a production process has a definable amount of water that goes in the process. When the end product is bottled water, if we're going to take them at their word, the end product is bottled water. That is a source of concern. Why is Mountain Pure is a name that's thrown around. I've tried to find a website on here. Their Facebook page hasn't had anything on it since 2014, at least in my brief search here. Why wouldn't the company that's going to use the facility be pitching to use the facility? Sidewinder as this middleman in the middle, casting no aspersions to anybody, but nobody gives a straight answer, and the lack of a straight answer just, I think, makes people nervous. And I can't imagine that the Planning Commission or the County Commission would buy into an unknown when the product is the water that everybody needs.
Right. Water is finite, and the town of Middleway is wells, and so they have a lot of reason for concern because we don't have the answers yet. And this has happened where companies could come in and exceed an amount that's appropriate. So I just want to make sure it's okay and that they're safe. As an elected official, it's my job to represent the citizens, and I do view that 90% of the people that have expressed concern are pro-growth people who see that Jefferson County does need a new use on that site and would be open to other things that make sense, that are industrial commercial. But I think this is a little bit different and does give a lot of folks pause for concern, and we just want answers, I think. So I want to give them the benefit of the doubt. I would like to know the end user. I would like to hear what them answer the question if they have an end user. I would hope that would be part of the conversation for the concept plan. So if there's technical questions, we feel confident in the answers given.
And why here? What is it about Middleway water that's so special?
Right.
I asked Sean that question. Did you listen to the interview, or did you get
I did. I don't remember that question, though.
Yeah, the question was about that, and he said really the way this came about was they had a client who was looking for a particular thing to be filled, and this 3M plant filled what they were looking for, and as such, the water became the business because it's there. Everything kind of fit the description for what the client was looking for. Who that client is, I don't know, but that's the way I interpreted it, and that's the way I understood it. It wasn't that we got to go to Jefferson County and get that water because that's what's going to put us over the top. the water was a byproduct of the location of where the 3M plant was as to what business might work and make the most sense with that facility.
And when we talk about the cone of depression, potential cone of depression, there is a known plume underneath the 3M site, which is about a mile away from where the extraction is, the extraction well.
Yeah.
The concern there is when you have a cone of depression, and I'm just say their well goes down because they're exceeding their extraction, they could actually pull that plume, and not only could that pull towards the well, that could also plume. Once that's tapped, it could have the potential to go into other wells in the surrounding area. And that's a major concern of the residents as well,
yes.
The safety of their wells and the quality of their wells. So
Bill Stubblefield brought that up, and I don't know that Sean had even heard of that before, because this is not his science. He's a finance guy. He's not a geologist or a hydrologist.
Right.
In that case, Mr. Kearns has experience with wells too, as the public health director here. Bill.
Yeah, the implication of potential problems is a huge public health issue. When you talk about extraction of the water versus your replenishment, I have to ask, has anyone, in the more water we pull out of the ground, it's going to come from aquifers. So as you're talking about people in wells, those are going to be the people that are impacted firsthand. Has Sidewinder or the county commission or planning, has anyone checked and worked with the health department in Jefferson County to get data on, over the last 10 years when we look at the drought conditions, how many wells have went dry because the aquifers have been depleted, that they've had to drill emergency wells? Mm-hmm. That's very important data to have, because if we're already experiencing that 5-10 years back, and then you're going to pull more water out of the ground, because you're going to pour more water out than is being replenished, obviously, what's going to be the long-term effects?
That's a good question. I don't believe that, to my knowledge, there has been, but I know recently we've talked about doing a comprehensive water study to understand the available resources in our county, and I do think that's a priority for 2025. The problem is that's concurrently happening, and it probably wouldn't be known until after their concept plan. So it would be a long process of procuring a water study, paying for it, figuring out how we're going to do it, complete it. So it probably would be by the end of the year, I think, has been kicked around.
I think your constituents are going to be very happy that you would do that study before letting them actually start drawing that water out of the ground.
Right.
Sean Masterson said during the interview, John, if you recall this, Bill, I don't think you heard the interview. Cara, you listened to it recently, I think maybe even live when it was on.
Which one?
The Sean Masterson from Sidewinder. Mm-hmm. When asked about the replenishment rate, he had said they were approved for, I think, 1.728 million gallons a day. When they did a test drawing from Lake Louise, and he said that the water didn't go back into, that was some of the speculation, was that the water was being put back in Lake Louise, so of course it was replenished if you're putting the water back in. He said no, it was released downstream. There was a very quick replenishment rate at that rate of 1.728 million gallons per day. It wasn't that it took the entire day. I think he said it was almost like minutes that it was replenished. Did you see that report? Do you have the science to back that up?
So I think, I believe that test was done prior to a drought condition. Mm-hmm. So that's, I think, a very important. We've had 2 summers of very bad droughts, and actually a lot of the planning commissioners are farmers, so they get it. They understand. They're good people. I think the public needs to give planning commissioners credit. They're just normal people in our county trying to do the right thing. So they understand it, and there's a lot of smart people in there. Some that understand wells, some that understand the natural resources of this. And how it could impact neighboring parcels. So I would strongly encourage that a transparent study be done in differing conditions, and making sure there's increased level of confidence in the study.
Have you found Sidewinder to be cooperative in giving you information? Have you even requested any from them directly at this point?
I have not at this point. But I look forward to hearing from them at the next concept plan and hearing what they have to say. It's our job to listen to both sides, and so I encourage them to bring forth this information, and this delay allows them the opportunity to do that. I would encourage them to focus less on PR and more on the science behind this and studies, so that the constituents are the neighboring parcels are satisfied with their answers.
John, you were about to ask?
Yeah, early in this process, someone, I don't remember who it was, led us to believe that this is nearly a done deal, that if the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed and they have met the requirements of the Planning Commission, the zoning type requirements, that there's really nothing we can do to stop it.
I think that was Steve Stollifer, the commission president.
Was that Steve Stollifer? Okay.
I think, yeah.
Is that in fact true? Having been on the Planning Commission and now on the County Commission, does it matter if people send in emails and letters and they make speeches at the commission meeting, if in fact they meet the technical details to build the plant? It's going to be built anyway?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I would think that there's this particular case has a lot of gray areas. This goes all the way up to state code with water. So water extraction is considered a community, a state issue, and that's supposed to be above the Planning Commission. But I looked at the code talking about water, and they talk about it being a community benefit. I would argue that this is not a community benefit, and so I think there's a lot of holes potentially in some of these arguments. I'm not sure what purview the Planning Commission has, but I do think there's a lot of other entities that have valid concerns that should be looking into them now, while there's time and they can have answers. The Planning Commission's just one part. We are bound between certain ways that we can deny or approve a project. So you're right, but this case particularly is a little different because you have a property that's industrial commercial, and then the parcels kind of go down like this, and those are all rural, and that's where the commercial extraction of water is. You have plumes, you have potential environmental concerns, you have a farmland protection, some wetlands that could be impacted. So there's a lot of government agencies that are going to have to look into this, all the way up to the state. So I would argue that this is above the Planning Commission purview. These are very important things that need to be sorted out. So, has
this gotten on anybody's desk at the state level to this point?
I do know that the delegates and Senator Rucker, they are aware of this issue, and I would just encourage them to look into the water issue that's a little vague in the state code, in my opinion.
The state owns the water, correct?
Correct.
Right. Cara Keys is our guest. She's a newly elected Jefferson County Commissioner, former member of the Planning Commission. No longer on the Planning Commission because you can only have one commissioner on a commission at a time, correct?
Correct.
And Steve Stollifer is the current Jefferson County Commissioner who's on the Planning Commission.
Correct.
He predated you. That's why he got to stay.
Yes. I had the shortest term in history. I think I started in April of this year, and then I got the boot in November.
So if all the water issues are worked out, the other issue I'd heard is also the roads. And will the sheer number of trucks required to haul water in and out of there, will those roads handle those trucks?
Yeah, that's a whole nother problem. So again, it's owned by the state. So it's right that the Planning Commission, it's not part of our purview, but it's a legitimate. I actually was door knocking with Pasha Majdi right before the election, and we were driving down Grace Street, which is where the entrance to the facility, and this news had just released about this 3M, and we didn't have really any information at that time, but I remember talking to Pasha. I said, "Oh my gosh, is this the only street that you get to the building?" He said, "Yeah."
Describe it.
It's a side residential street you'd see in a historic town that's pretty narrow, and I thought, wow, that's and the historic homes along the street that are pretty close to the road already. So this is above me and above the county commission. The state does have control over the roads. I'm not sure how they would fit 18-wheelers through there and the traffic that
and a couple hundred employees.
Yeah. So yeah, that's another point of concern by residents. And I think one of the things Sean talked